this video we talk about why papers look the way they do when you turn them in and how to get them just so. Papers for college should look a certain way because readers expect them to look a certain way, at least in the formatting and appearance of a paper, if not in the general writing of it. The rule of thumb here to follow is to follow conventions. No big surprise there. Readers expect a certain look for a paper, and generally speaking, it shouldn't take you a long time to achieve that look. Other advice. Your teachers usually will tell you exactly what they want in terms of formatting, especially if you listen closely and you ask them. Often they'll show you examples. You can really always ask a teacher about formatting. A good time to ask is when they first pass out a written assignment. I wouldn't obsess over the formatting for a paper. One of the reasons why I created this video is because I get the question a lot. I think that formatting is sort of important, though my emphasis, as you'll see, is on the writing, and the writing interests me the most. Formatting, usually all it can do is sort of detract from that. So any time spent on extra formatting pieces, funny fonts, other things, doesn't really add to the writing for me. And that's a good rule to follow, actually. If your assignment includes essential content that a teacher asks for, don't spend your time messing around with formatting. If anything, try and get that out of the way with a quick question to your teacher. And then if you're in a class where you're not given a format, use mine. It's pretty standard, as you'll see from what I show here in just a second. Am I interested in fancy fonts or fancy borders? Not really. The emphasis is always on the writing for me, as it is generally speaking for instructors. There are cases where students have asked me about adding pictures to papers, lots of interesting graphics, weird borders. In the day and age when I collected crush tree paper, meaning actual papers from students, they've put on plastic binders that were really fancy they got from the local copy store. My emphasis is always on the writing and getting it right. It's one of the reasons, again, why I create this video, because I think students' formatting questions can be answered pretty simply. And it's also one of the reasons why I try and make it easy for them. Here's a typical Turnitin classroom, much the same as we have for our class. And you'll find that on the calendar, which you can click right here, click calendar, you see where I'm holding my mouse. It'll come up with the calendar for class. Make sure you've got the right month. Don't be off a month. Sometimes you'll see different things. You see things that you won't expect. Especially if an assignment's given out early, people won't click on the right month for the assignment that we're working on. And down at the bottom, see, oh, there's a template for papers. And all you need to do is click on the clipboard. Up will come a template for papers. You can download this document. What could be more interesting than watching me download a document? We download it, it brings it up, and here it is. You enable the editing, that'll get you out of another jam. And then here's the format. Nothing terribly spectacular and lots of things to delete here. Have students turned in a paper with your full name written on it. Yeah, they have actually. Students will sometimes laugh at that. I think it's because students are stressed and not sure what they're supposed to be turning in. So really you want to make sure that it's your name that's going to be on here and not anyone else's. Let's do John Doe. And I know that's not imaginative, but there it is. Followed by the instructor's name, the class section, right, and the date. And since we're doing this, we might as well do it right. Here's making this video on the 25th of August, 2014. Oh, so long ago. And you can do that as far as a date format. That's pretty standard, though you can also do it where you have the month, date with a comma. I don't care. It's just these essential features that are necessary, and they make sense, actually. They should have your name identifying what's necessary there. And I have a text box here. I'm going to eliminate it because it keeps highlighting. That makes sense. The name of the teacher of the class, the name of the class itself, the date. That means that if the paper ever gets mislaid or something happens to the paper itself, that we know where it belongs. Have I had students turn in papers for other classes? Yes, I have. When I collected papers that were actually physical crush tree papers, and also when they're collected online, I've had students turn in pages out of order in both formats, if you can imagine that. That's also another reason why it's a good idea to get in the habit of putting a page number. And that goes in the upper right. There it is. I'm trying to be fancy with this stuff, and don't spend a lot of time on it. It's one reason why I created this template. Your last name does go here. The general convention is that it should go on the second pages and following, though I have students do it from page 1. There's a logic to that, or actually I should fix this. It's not Collins, it's Doe. The convention here is that back when papers were turned in for academic writing and for college essays, you'd have students have pages of the papers get separated, or in one case slid under a door, and they get mixed with other student papers that were slid under the door at the same time. Always good to have an identifying feature on each page of the paper. Again, papers get mixed up, they get turned in out of order. Always a good idea to make sure that you have some identifying feature, and that's why it's done. That's why the repetition. This part only goes on the first page, though the common mistake students will make, they'll put it on every page. This is the only thing that gets put on every page. And again, the logic behind that, we can identify the paper and where it belongs. Should be a title, should be interesting. First letter capitalized in the title. Doesn't have to be fancy font. Please don't spend a lot of time on that stuff. It's really not necessary. I'm interested in writing. That can be as creative as you really want to be. I find this title pretty boring, and I know you can do better. But at least the formatting is done. It says the text starts here in indented, double space formatting. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Let's do this. Here is where I start my amazing and wonderful paper. And I know that font and formatting won't get me down at all. Now that was really interesting to hear me write out that. Notice here there's indented first line for an academic writing, and then it goes back here and the margins all lined up, and that's what happens when you start a new paragraph too, though don't start it with just one sentence for a paragraph. Paragraphs are usually longer than that. There's no magic number for paragraphs. Here's where the second paragraph would start. You eliminate this text box because it just has some information about what I've seen in the past. And there you have your formatting done. Did that take me longer than a minute? No, it did not. And it shouldn't take you longer than a minute as well. I'm trying to save you time, but also have you understand why things are done the way that they're done. Down at the bottom of this particular template, you'll notice that it has that works cited, which I'll talk about in another video. It has a bibliographic citation, which is important, but I'm going to separate it out for treatment in another time. I include it here not because every assignment's going to have this, but the ones that do, you should know that they must be there. Anyway. I'll detail this in more detail in another video, so you can look for that. So that's creating the format for the paper. I'm not going to save this. If we go back here, you might notice that that's the Turnitin file. And remember, that's where it's found there. And you click right on that clipboard to find it. Don't click on this because it won't give you that. You can also find sometimes in classes which I'll use where I'll use D2L more extensively, I'll have the same information. You just go under Class Essentials, and students will be asking me, where is the Class Essentials? Well, it's right there under Class Essentials, and it is a kind of essential thing. Get it done and out of the way. Here's the template. You click on it. It'll download it. You notice that as far as D2L, same sort of procedure. You're just downloading a file. Takes just a second to do it. You find it calls it right up. You can click on it, and we wait patiently, it'll still take us less than 20 seconds to get that format. Same sort of file. Okay. Why do I do this for students? I'm not trying to cut corners, but I get so many questions about formatting that I don't want to spend much time on it. I want to explain why it's necessary. I want to explain why it's important, but we should get beyond it as a class because it's the writing that I'm most interested in. Formatting will affect papers usually only if it's a negative effect, because the formatting is weird, because the font is watermelon size, because they've tried to spend more time on the borderings than they have on the writing. That's not what I'm interested in. If you wrap up a package and the wrapping paper is beautiful but the gift itself is garbage, no thanks. I want that content to be there. I want good writing to be there, and that's the goal. You might notice too that I'll just use Purdue here. Other schools, University of Minnesota, University of Wisconsin, at Madison, will have the same sort of examples of student papers. Here's one that talks about a sample paper and give you formatting for that sample paper, if I can find it. And as it gives it to you, notice, it's the same sort of thing. Text box, examples of how things should look. There it all is, folks. Took me a second, but really just a second, about 10 seconds to find that file. You can find that this is true for most colleges, for most universities. There might be some deviation, but usually your instructors will let you know that. And if you have any questions, you can always go to your instructor and ask for more details, right? And they'll, if they don't answer you directly, they'll at least give you a link or provide you with help. You can also go to tutors. We get these questions a lot. We like to get beyond them, not because they're unimportant, but because usually there's something important about the writing that we have to draw our attention to. All right, so here we have our video that's intended to inspire confidence in how you can format papers and get to the actual writing of the paper. Spend more time on that than on the actual formatting of the paper. Good luck.